Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guest today is Tim Hankewich from Orchestra, Iowa. Back to talk about an upcoming concert. But before we do that, we have to just relive and bask in the afterglow of what a fun night Bruce Orchestra was just a few weeks ago. What a triumphant return after such a long, long layoff.
Thank you so much for saying that, and thanks to you and KCCK for broadcasting it simultaneously. That was a real treat. Thank you so much.
So fun. It was so fun to have that. We just had a blast.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's great to have a win, and I think there was all this pent-up energy and desire to finally celebrate a degree of normalcy. And being able to do such an extravaganza and pull it off so well, because this was a real stress test for our organization. We hadn't produced a concert for over a year and a half. And in terms of logistics, Bruce Moore it's the most complicated thing that we do. There are so many moving parts. And so
so you had to start with the hardest thing.
That is correct. And so our staff came through it with flying colors, and the orchestra did extraordinarily well. The cast was superb, and the weather agreed with us. So it couldn't have been better.
It was a perfect night, but onward and upward.
Yes, here we are.
Let's go back to the Paramount.
Yes.
So do you remember where it is?
Yes, because luckily I can still walk to it. And I should be doing that a little bit more often because I have some COVID pounds to get rid of. So, I'll be walking to work a whole lot more now.
And this begins/continues, because I know you've had a chamber concert, the Beethoven celebration that is something else that was supposed to happen last year for his how many 100th birthday?
Yeah, it's his 250th. Last year was his 250th anniversary, and he didn't look a day over 249. And a lot of the programming this year, especially when it's centered around Beethoven, is recycled from last year that couldn't happen. And in fact, even though many people think that all we do is perform symphonic concerts at the Paramount, actually the bulk of the work goes on at the Opus Concert Cafe. And as you've said, we have our first Friday Jazz coming up on Friday. We've had already the beginnings of our chamber series that we've already performed. And also, we have this new project that we're performing in collaboration with the University of Iowa, where we're performing all 32 Beethoven piano sonatas, which a lot of people think that the 9 symphonies are his greatest achievement and contribution to his musical legacy, but actually it's the 32 piano sonatas that's really Herculean.
And but this is one of the sonatas.
This is one of the sonatas. So our guest artist, Stewart Goodyear, who will be performing the Emperor Piano Concerto this weekend, which is one of my favorite piano concertos. We hired him for a couple of reasons. A, he's an amazing artist, an amazing composer and pianist. But one of his party tricks is to be able to sit down and play all 32 Beethoven piano sonatas in one sitting. And that, it's a long party if you had to do that. I mean, that's almost 24 hours of music. But there are very few people who can do that. So he's going to be here this weekend playing the Emperor Piano Concerto, and then 2 weeks later he'll be back in the area to perform Beethoven's Hammerklavier Sonata, which to this day is still one of the hardest pieces in the repertoire to play.
Really?
So he'll be performing that both here in Cedar Rapids and at the University of Iowa. So it's really great to have an artist of his capabilities and stature joining us for this inaugural concert.
The Emperor Concerto.
Yes. And one of the great things about this particular concerto, it's Beethoven's last concerto. He was pretty much completely deaf by the time he wrote it, so he didn't perform it himself. But he changes the script. When Mozart was writing concertos, it was basically an even dialogue between soloist and orchestra. Now, because of the stature of Beethoven, and also Napoleon, by the way, was also one of the great heroic figures of his age. Now the soloist becomes hero, in which the major bulk of the musical material happens in the soloist's hands rather than in the orchestra. So it's really soloist first, orchestra second. And this is something that continues all the way up into the music of Liszt and Rachmaninoff, and even to this day. It's all about showing the chops of the soloist and having the orchestra behind them.
It's an all-Beethoven program with the Beethoven Concerto and a little symphony that some people may have heard of, Beethoven's Fifth.
Yeah, the four most famous notes ever written. It's only fitting, because it's such a famous work, and It also was the work that inaugurated the newly minted New York Philharmonic's first concert back in the 1840s. And so it's always, since its creation, has always been considered one of the great masterworks of all time in the symphonic repertoire. So it's good for the orchestra to come back to play something as well known and as important as that, but also allow the orchestra to regain its footing. After all, we haven't played together for a year and a half. And so the fundamentals that we used to take for granted as, the basics of playing together, we're going to have to sort of relearn that and become reacquainted with ourselves. And so I'm very much looking forward to it, because this program was designed for them to really catch their breath and really take off. Plus, I mean, you can't program anything more popular for the classical audience of having the Fifth Symphony of Beethoven and his Fifth Piano Concerto.
Setting aside, COVID and being off for a year and a half and all that, but as a conductor and as a leader of the orchestra, do you tackle arguably the most famous work in all of classical music differently than anything else?
Yes, that's interesting that you say that, because on one hand, the familiar is of great comfort to an orchestra that has not performed together for a very long time. So this is a great choice. But in terms of keeping it fresh, that is really excellent, because literally about a month and a half ago, I bought a new score to Beethoven, Fifth Symphony, and I started studying it from scratch again.
So none of your old notes,
That's
none
correct.
of the old pencil marks.
And that's right. So all my idiot marks, so that I call them, are. And when I compared the two afterwards, I realized how different my thought process has evolved. And so I thought, instead of taking time here, I'm going to take some time here, or realizing just some structural things that I completely overlooked the first time through. So having a more experienced eye on this piece has allowed me to rethink it and also rediscover a lot of details that I missed when I thought I knew it all back 20 years ago.
Beethoven 5 to lead off the indoor season of Orchestra Iowa, and we kind of glossed over just a little bit Stewart Goodyear's credentials, but he is apparently one of the best pianists on the planet.
Yeah, the Philadelphia Inquirer has singled him out as one of the greatest pianists, if not the greatest pianist of his generation. I mean, again, we've had this conversation many times. The challenge for orchestras our size is to find that person who is just about to break it big. And if we time it right, we hire them the moment before that happens.
Right before you can't afford them anymore.
We did that with Zlatimir Fung right before he won the Tchaikovsky competition. We did that with Augustin Hadelich, the great violinist, before his New York debut. And we did that the same with Scott Goodyear. Now he's playing everywhere. And in fact, it's, to get him back to play the Hammerklavier program was quite a Rubik's Cube of fitting schedules together. So I am delighted that we've got him here, so please come and listen and enjoy it, because it'll be a very long and expensive journey to get him back.
It's Beethoven 5x5, Saturday at the Paramount and Sunday at the Coralville Center, yes?
Yes, correct. And we always, 45 minutes before, have a little bit of a pre-concert discussion where you get to listen and talk to and ask questions of our soloists and just see what's behind the scenes and see how the sausage was made before you hear it in its final product.
And you briefly mentioned First Friday Jazz, but
Yes.
First Friday Jazz, actually the second Friday because of your chamber
Yeah, let's
schedule.
not get details in the way, I mean, because we in the
it's-
classical business can't count. But you're absolutely right. This happens to be the second Friday, but from here on in, it will be the first Friday, as it should rightfully always be.
Eddie Picard
Will
will be at the piano with his quartet, so we are so excited to have an. Of course, we had our streaming-only shows, a few of them last year, but
This is significant. This is the first time live back again. Are you excited
we'll have
about
an
that?
audience. I'm so excited.
That is fabulous.
So I will see you on Friday and
Yes.
Saturday. And
Wonderful.
again, if people need tickets to either of these events, there are still tickets for First Friday. And of course, love to have you at Beethoven 5x5 at either the Paramount or the Coralville Center for the Performing Arts. And the website to get those tickets is
orchestraiowa.org, or just pick up the phone and call 319-366-8206.
All right. Tim Hankewich from Orchestra, Iowa. Thanks very much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You can hear the Culture Crawl live on the radio many weekdays at 10:20, or download the podcast, watch or listen on your own schedule at kcck.org/culture, or however you get your podcasts. I'm Dennis Green. I'll talk to you later.